Greetings, this is Jed Schlackman, and in this video presentation I will be discussing the topic of belief systems, belief structures, and cognitive dissonance, helping us understand how we either hold on to old beliefs or we allow ourselves to open up to changing them based on new information and new experiences. As each of us go through our life, we are faced with all different kinds of information being presented to us, as well as our own unique personal path of experience. Based on that, we form our beliefs, our ideas about life, about the reality that we live in. And for some of us, it can be very challenging to let go of old beliefs. Those beliefs may be an important part of our identity, so there also can be external reinforcements. We may get rewarded in some way for maintaining certain sets of beliefs, at least in a social or material sense. So it's not always easy to objectively or in an unbiased manner start to re-examine your beliefs. For those of you that are watching this presentation, I would like for you to kind of go back into an earlier time in your life and remember when you had some significant belief or idea about something that you ended up changing, probably based on new experiences you had or being exposed to new ideas, to information that gave you a better understanding about something. One common example of this in our American culture is the belief system that children have about the character Santa Claus. Many children are taught that at Christmas time, around that holiday, there's this man who wears this special costume, who has this white beard, who flies through the sky in a sleigh pulled by reindeer, is delivering gifts, giving them to all the children in the world. And of course, many children really truly believe this story. Those of us who are adults watching this would probably think it would be quite strange if we met another adult who believed that story. But for children, we accept it as somewhat normal for them to accept a story like that, which really is contradicted by logic, by so much external evidence. At that young age, children are very impressionable, and when their parents, when the people who are their caretakers, their close loved ones, tell them something, they tend to naturally believe in it, to accept it as true. When you're a very young child, your parents are kind of like God figures. You idolize them, you look up to them, you expect them to protect you, to do whatever is in your best interest. So they're there to care for you, to help you succeed in life. And when they tell you something, you would typically believe it unless you've had experiences where they prove themselves to be untrustworthy to you and you started to shift your beliefs toward lack of trust in them. This can explain to some extent why children so easily are led to believe in the Santa Claus story. Also, children will talk to their peers, and if many of their peers also believe that same story, then the child is inclined to accept it even more strongly as something that's true. So there's that form of peer pressure where it's comfortable to have your beliefs conform to the beliefs of other people around you. There's a rather famous children's story called The Emperor's New Clothes. And in that story, it highlights this idea that people will tend to go along with a story that even on the face of it makes no sense if everyone around them seems to all agree on this same story. So when the emperor was walking with no clothes on, walking naked, but pretending that he had clothes, and everyone around him saying he had clothes on, hardly anyone was ready to confront that obvious falsehood. People can condition themselves to accept something that's really obviously not true, just to conform to society, to be accepted by others around them. And that can happen at any age. It's not only children. Adults can be drawn into that form of conformity as well. Now, if we go through different points in our life, all of us will see that we don't maintain the same identity, the exact same sets of beliefs and values. As we grow older and evolve, we tend to become more mature in the way we think. Our sense of what's important, our priorities may shift. And our ability to apply critical thinking also tends to improve. That being said, even adults will often fall for things that are really misleading, things that are not true, because they fail to apply critical thinking or close examination of something for whatever reason. A belief system tends to be self-reinforcing. So whatever beliefs, whatever assumptions we're attached to will cause us to filter the information and experiences we have in a biased or prejudiced way. We'll tend to filter out things that might challenge what we believe, and we will tend to twist or distort whatever information or evidence is available to make it fit or support what we already believe. You can look at examples of that in things like religion and politics, where people are strongly attached to a particular belief system, a particular set of ideas or assumptions, and they'll cherry pick whatever information appears to reinforce their ideas, while they tend to avoid or suppress any information that would be challenging to what they consider to be true. With any of us looking at our beliefs, we need to caution ourselves not to do that. We have to be willing to consider the possibility that our current beliefs are not accurate, and that there's other information out there which could give us a better understanding, a better idea of what's true. Another factor that can affect what people choose to believe is the perceived authority of the information or idea source. Going back to the example of children, children perceive their parents as authorities in most cases. So they're accepting that their parents know what is true, and that their parents intend to share with that child something that is factual. As we grow older, we may find other authority figures who we tend to trust or believe in. It could be teachers, it could be classmates, it could be media personalities, people we see on television. It could be someone who's written a book that we've read, or someone who maintains a certain website. So we have to choose and discern what sources of information or guidance we consider to be trustworthy. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you would look at it, there is no person or organization who we can be sure is 100% accurate all the time on everything. We all have our limitations, our blind spots, things that we may not know or that we may misinterpret. And that means that the only authority is the truth or the facts themselves, not the person or source of information sharing it. So we have to consider that even someone who is usually very reliable and gives good information about things can make a mistake. If you were to look at any particular news story that's presented in the mass media, you could start out by exploring what assumptions surround that story, what sources of information were used to supply the facts for that story, and also are there any other interpretations, any other versions of that story or that particular event that are being presented by other sources. Sometimes we're only exposed to a narrow range of information or input about something, and we're not even aware that there are a variety of viewpoints or ideas on that particular subject. There's a famous quote which comes from Benjamin Franklin, which says that if everyone is thinking alike, perhaps no one's really thinking at all. I'm paraphrasing his quote. If we consider that and we look at the news, we might notice that all the corporate mass media sources appear to be presenting almost the exact same version of a story. That seems kind of odd. If we were to pick out any other event that occurs in our community and were to ask several people who are in some way connected to that event what occurred, we'll probably get a variety of perspectives. Thus, if all the perspectives we're hearing seem too much identical or too much alike, that suggests that somehow this reporting is biased, that there's a particular agenda to get these stories to conform and present that particular idea to the public. One particular very well-known historical event where we can explore this idea of belief systems and cognitive dissonance would be the events of September 11th in 2001. And there we have this violent attack that occurs, this terror event. And when that event occurred, most people were shocked. So the general public were in a state of shock that the Twin Towers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. had been struck and severely damaged or destroyed in the case of the World Trade Center. In that state of shock, people may not think that clearly or critically, and people are eager to receive some authoritative explanation of things. In the news reporting, the authoritative explanation that came and it came rather quickly, was that there were terrorists who were led by the organizational director, per se, of their terror group, Osama bin Laden, who had apparently commandeered, hijacked aircraft and crashed them into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. This was a story that was told to the public. Even at the same time, there were people from the government presenting a story that they were caught off guard by what had happened, that they were as surprised as anyone else, that they could not have foreseen this particular attack. In the days and months and years that followed, lots of other information started to come out which would question and challenge the story told by the government. There was a lot of evidence that those particular men accused of hijacking the planes would not have been capable of flying those planes and precision guiding them to the targets that they hit. There was also a lot of reports that the Twin Towers could not have fallen as a result of a fire that was started by jet fuel, and many other signs that something was being covered up, that there was some hidden agenda. Many other theories that supported the idea that there was some form of foreknowledge or involvement in those events by people within the United States government. Yet at the time those events occurred, very few people were actually willing to look at or accept the possibility of those explanations of the events. So over time, from 2001 up through the present, we're already in 2015 now, almost 14 years later, a lot more people have begun to believe the alternative, the non-government explanations, the ideas that there is a cover-up and some form of inside job. The fact that the beliefs shifted over time in that direction rather than shifting over time toward agreeing with the government story shows us what happens when there is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is what happens when we're confronted with information, with experiences that challenge our current belief system or point of view. Since the vast majority of Americans at that time in 2001 had a belief system that their government was relatively trustworthy in the sense that they would not carry out some horrible attack or support the carrying out of some great attack upon the citizens of the country itself. So people were biased in their belief systems against that possibility. However, over time, as people were confronted more and more with this evidence that something wasn't right, that the explanation the government provided did not add up or conform to the available facts, more and more people started to question their existing beliefs and start to adopt these other viewpoints, the idea that perhaps the government was somehow involved in what happened, and that there truly was this conspiracy, which was not the same conspiracy that the government had alleged with the Arab hijackers. With cognitive dissonance, people often hold on to their old viewpoints, even when they are faced with this really solid, convincing evidence that their existing belief systems are not accurate. So it may take time for repeated presentations of that challenging information until people start to reconsider their beliefs. It's important for anyone who wishes to really expand their consciousness, to evolve, to become more mature or more aware, to be able to look at new information and to be able to transform their beliefs if their experiences and information that comes into their consciousness really support those changes. This affects us in every aspect of our life. It affects us in our relationships, in how we perceive and relate to other people. We carry many different biases and prejudices based on whatever past experiences we've had. We may have created beliefs or ideas about things that are imbalanced or distorted. This affects us in terms of our profession or our career and how we're doing our job. We may be attached to a certain way of doing things in our professional work, and we may feel uncomfortable or even threatened if someone comes to us and presents a better way, a more efficient or productive way to do something. Yet if we want to learn and grow, we have to be open to that. This affects some of our most basic beliefs about the world around us, about our existence. So our political beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, our philosophical beliefs. Those beliefs have a very profound influence on how we live our lives. Yet many of our beliefs are based on distorted information. Many of them come from cultures or families that are dysfunctional. If we look at our own life and see that there's dysfunction there, it's essential to consider that that dysfunction in our own life may be related to our own dysfunctional beliefs. If we want to see things change in our life externally, it's vital to be able to make changes internally, to make shifts in our consciousness. If we can't change our consciousness, why should we expect anything around us to change? For the external world is really there to provide a reflection for our inner world. Our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, those are all forms of energy which are influencing the field of energy and the reality that surrounds us. So we're constantly projecting and radiating out those patterns which will influence what is reflected back to us in our life experience. Also, it is our own perspective, our own beliefs, our own interpretations that are giving meaning to what we experience in our external world. If a person is always looking at things in a negative way, always seeing themselves as a victim, then they are going to constantly recreate scenarios in their lives that reinforce that belief, that reflect back to them what they already think is true. Part of that is due to what they're helping create, and part of it is the bias in their interpretation, where they're continually seeking out ways to confirm their current bias, their current belief system. A person who tends to look at things usually in a very positive way, who sees everything in life as an opportunity, a chance to learn, to grow, to evolve, is going to have a much different experience in life compared to a person who is always feeling like a victim, looking for negatives, trying to judge others, and so on. Cognitive dissonance is something that we're all encountering in our lives. We all have beliefs that eventually will be challenged or confronted in some way. Sometimes it happens consciously, where we're actually looking to get more information or a better understanding, while other times it comes at us without our preparation for it. So it's an unplanned for new experience, unplanned for new source of information that is presented to us. And in those situations, we may be less willing to reconsider our beliefs because we weren't actually looking to re-examine them. However, each of us is a spiritual being who is part of what you could call a higher self. So we have our human personality here, this more limited form of identity, and then on a higher level of existence, a higher plane of consciousness, we have this higher self. And that version of ourself wants us to grow and evolve, to go through different experiences that foster or catalyze our growth. So we may be given those kinds of experiences that challenge our beliefs for the purpose of helping us grow, of helping us let go of our old self, our old identity, so that we can evolve into something more conscious, more aware, more empowered. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you in this video, and I encourage all of you to explore and research the topic of cognitive dissonance, of belief systems and belief structures, and to take some time to contemplate, to meditate, to look at your own beliefs, your own ideas about life, about who you are, why you are here, your ideas about people around you, your ideas about God and creation, about the universe, about how life unfolds, about different laws or principles that govern our life experience. So explore all those ideas, see what you find resonates with you, what works best for you, and always be open to growing, to expanding your consciousness. Don't feel too attached to any beliefs that you presently hold, and that will give you the opportunity to go further on your path. Namaste.